everybody. This video is to help you get started programming in Python. The first thing that you need to do is install Python. So open your favorite web browser and go to python.org. The install process should be very, very simple. I'm on a Windows computer. If I highlight Windows, there's a button, or if I highlight Downloads, there's a button to download Python 3.10.6, which is the most recent version. If you're on a Mac or some other operating system, this website will probably detect it and give you a different button. If it doesn't, you can click View the full list of downloads and download the most recent version of Python for your operating system. Now, if you get really into Python and you learn some advanced techniques, there are some reasons to have older versions of Python, but for a beginner, you can just install the most recent version. So once you have that installed, go to wherever your programs are installed on your computer. On Windows, that would be the Start menu. And if you scroll down, you can see I have several different versions of Python installed. So if I click Python 3.10, the most recent version, a few things pop up. Python idle is a little program where you can make new Python programs or just type in Python commands. So we'll type in the first command that everybody learns in Python. It's called print. Then you open parenthesis, and then you can type a message inside quotation marks. Now, the most traditional message that you print for your first program is hello world. Close your quotation marks and close parenthesis. So this is a fully fledged Python command. If you press enter, it prints that message to the screen. Now, while I'm here, I'll just go ahead and mention that Python is also a built-in calculator. It'll do math for you. So for example, 3 plus 5 in parenthesis times 2. This will follow your order of operations from math class. So that's going to be 3 plus 5 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16. And there you go. So you have a calculator if you ever lose yours. Now, nobody is ever really going to do any programming in Python idle. So I'm just going to close that. What people do when they write their own programs typically is they download a separate program called an IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. PyCharm is an example of that. Now, PyCharm has a professional paid version and it has a free community edition. The professional paid version, large teams of programmers working on big projects could use PyCharm. Now, in my opinion, PyCharm is a bit much for a beginning programmer. So I'm not going to show you PyCharm. However, I've had some students in the past go ahead and learn how to use PyCharm. And it's fine if you want to do that. Also, VS Code, Visual Studio Code from Microsoft, I've had some students like this. It is a little bit more complicated. You'll have to do some Googling to get Python set up and learn how to use VS Code if you choose to do that. Now for beginners, I suggest using a very simple IDE. And the one I like is called Geany. Geany is almost not even an IDE. It's like a really fancy version of Notepad or whatever the equivalent is on a Mac. So if you go to geany.org, you can download the latest version of Geany and install it. So if you do that, I brought up my Geany here. I've changed the color template to be in dark mode. You can figure out how to do that. It's pretty simple. Now, once you open Geany, if you click New, you'll start a file. This is called Untitled. Now, since Geany is compatible with lots of programming languages, not just Python, every time you start a file, you have to tell Geany what type of file it is. And in order to do that, if you click File, Save As, you can choose a place where you want to store your programs and give it a name. So I'm just going to call this My File. But the important part is that I give the correct extension. py indicates that this is a Python file. So whatever you save your file is, you have to end the file name with .py. And this tells Geany that this is supposed to be a Python file, as opposed to a C++ file or a Java file or some other programming language. Press save, and now Genie knows that this is going to be a Python file. So let's write our Hello World program again. And you can see why people use IDEs. It's very common that these color code the various parts of your program. So print is a built-in function. This turned orange. This message, which is called a string, shows up in green. So you know if something doesn't turn the appropriate color, then maybe you've made a mistake. So you can save this file, Control S, or use the menu. And then to actually run the file in various programming languages, there are some buttons at the top. Compile, build, and execute. Now, Python, you don't need to worry about the compile button or the build button. And I won't use the technical terminology, but Python doesn't need these. All you have to do to execute a Python program is click execute. So we'll click execute, and it brings up a little terminal window. It looks slightly different on Windows, and you can see that we've printed our message to the screen. We printed Hello World. Press any key to continue, and this will close. Now, it's possible, especially if you're using an Apple, a Macintosh, that you got some sort of error and you didn't see Hello World. If that happened to you, go to Build and Set Build Commands. And the command that's important is the one at the very bottom. It says execute. So this is what Genie is supposed to do when you execute this file. So you can see this says py, that says run Python, and the quote %f means run Python with the file that you have open. So it's telling it to execute the current Python file. Now what happens in a Mac is, from what we researched, a Mac will come built in with an older version of Python 2. Well, we installed Python 3. So to tell it which one to use, you can change the execute command to either Python, you can try that and see if it works, or Python 3. Now I'm not going to do any of those. Windows doesn't have that problem. It doesn't come installed with an older version of Python, so I'm going to leave this as py. But Python or Python 3, leave the quote %f as it is if you're having any trouble. So that's how you get started. So what you need is install Python, install your favorite IDE, and learn to run the Hello World file. And that's the beginning. Once you do that, in a few months' time, you'll be able to write your own programs. Here's a little program that I wrote last year. It's a little game, only a couple hundred lines of code, but you'll learn how to do this too. Anyway, get the necessary files and programs installed, and we'll start learning some programming really soon.